Rabbi Jeremy Wiederhorn has been the spiritual leader of the conservative synagogue in Westport for over 15 years. He's also president of the Interfaith Clergy Association of Westport and Weston, and president of the New York Board of Rabbis. He's led many trips to Israel, often introducing congregants and others to the Holy Land. Rabbi, you came to Westport after 8 years as the rabbi at a temple in Henderson, Nevada. Was that a good bet?
It was great, actually. It was fantastic. I was a young rabbi just out of rabbinical school, and I grew up in the West Coast, and my wife and I were starting to have kids, and we wanted to be close to family. And it was really a special opportunity because you could be a pioneer. I was essentially the first rabbi of the congregation, and was able to really build it from scratch. Unfortunately, our kids started to grow up and notice things like billboards and slot machines in the supermarkets and things like that, and we decided it wasn't the place that we wanted to really raise our children. And so after 8 years, it was time to move on, but it was really a fantastic experience.
Did Westport come looking for you, or did you find Westport?
Essentially, I found Westport. The way rabbinic searches work is that synagogues that are looking for rabbis will enter a placement service, and the rabbis looking will enter that same placement service. And
it's like J-Date.
Yeah, and we see if it's a right match. And so I interviewed at a few different places and fell in love with Westport.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you know anything about it?
Knew very little about Westport, actually, although I did serve as an intern when I was in rabbinical school at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. I served as an intern in Long Island for 3 years and lived there in Roslyn, New York, and made some connections with folks that had connections to Westport. And so when it was time to look for a job, that was helpful, and they were able to tell me a little bit about the town.
So 15 years here. What have you learned about the faith community in Westport, and is it the same type of faith community now as when you first arrived?
I learned right away that the faith community here was really just that, a community of people who care. I was taken in right away by Rabbi Bob Orkan at Temple Israel, who introduced me to the Interfaith Clergy Association and all of the other clergy in town that meet once a month on Tuesdays and have done so for years and years. And just know that we spend time with each other learning about our common struggles and our common values, and we've been there for each other throughout the years. It's really been one of the highlights of my time here, is really working across the denominations and just learning so much about all of our different colleagues over the years. And there have been many phenomenal ones during these 15 years.
I'm fascinated by I have this vision of the rabbis and the priests and the ministers getting together. Like, what do you talk about?
Well, look, we talk about everything, everything, even personal lives, some of the similar struggles that we have in churches and in synagogues. We put together programs over the course of the year. We've been involved in the Martin Luther King celebration, for a long time now. We used to have Thanksgiving commemorations that probably should come back again. We haven't done those in quite some time. And we also bring in guests. We should probably bring you in, Dan, one of these days. Tomorrow we have the superintendent coming to speak with us. And we've had numerous guests over the course of the years. Bill Harmer from the library here has been a guest, and sort of like this conversation, we bring in interesting people in town and talk to them. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What have you learned from your interactions with, including the other rabbis in town?
Well, I think that I've learned that that we have a lot more in common than divides us. In Nevada, we didn't have such a strong interfaith community, and that was something that I yearned for. And I've also learned that this is not something that we should take for granted. That not every town has such a strong interfaith presence. When there, whether it's good times or tragedies occur, and you have a community of clergy that love and respect each other, then it makes it a lot easier to come together. We've had some difficult times over the 15 years, whether it was Newtown or I remember being out on the lawn of Saugatuck Church after the fire. Everyone came together at our congregation at TCS after the Tree of Life tragedy massacre 5 years ago. And all the clergy came together and were there to support one another at all of these times. And so when you have a community, when you have a group of friends, you have people that understand each other, and then it makes the difficult times a lot easier, and it makes the nice times that much more joyous.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure. It really is a community, as you say.
Yeah.
Any Muslim presence?
In Westport, we don't have a strong Muslim presence, but we do have some friends that we've made in Norwalk and Bridgeport and some of the surrounding areas. One of our local imams did come to our Tree of Life commemoration. We came to all of our Thanksgiving commemorations over the years, and it is something that would be nice to have some stronger relationships. But we do have some in the area. Yeah.
Oh, that's
we have stronger. I know we'll talk a little bit later. I have been involved in the New York Board of Rabbis for the last several years, and we have strong Jewish-Muslim dialogues through that tri-state organization through New York that have been really inspiring as well.
I mean, that sounds like being head of the New York City rabbis is a big deal. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we have. I'm actually the past president now. Past president. I finished up this past year. We have about 750 rabbis from New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. I was the first president from Connecticut. It's mostly New York centered. We have a rotation between Reform, Conservative, Orthodox rabbis that spent a couple years serving as the president. And as I said, we do a lot of interfaith work, and that's really been really eye-opening. We have a great relationship with the Catholic Church and Cardinal Dolan. We had a big event this past week where he was there. We're honoring Reverend A.R. Bernard, a African-American preacher in Brooklyn, who's really a great friend of the New York Board of Rabbis and very, very supportive. We have a great relationship with, as I mentioned, with the Muslim community, but also with the LDS church as well. I spent some time out in Salt Lake City and got a tour of a temple that was about to be dedicated, and they've been very supportive of us as well. And the New York Board of Rabbis has essentially become the central address for all interfaith work in New York City. And so anytime there is a program, if the governor, if the mayor is looking to bring together interfaith clergy, they almost always go to the New York Board of Rabbis first to try to bring everyone together. And that's really become, an important focus of our work. And that's really thanks to Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, who's the executive vice president.
It has to be
director.
Very fulfilling for you. We're taping this, less than a month after the horrible Hamas attack on Israel.
Yeah.
What has that been like for you personally as a faith leader, and what's it been like for Westport as a community?
Right. Well, I can start personally, actually, as a father, because I have two children in Israel, and I have a son who is on a gap year. Before going to college, he was accepted to the University of Michigan and took a year off, and is in Jerusalem studying there, and has been volunteering ever since the war started. My daughter actually moved to Israel after a gap year in Israel and served in the IDF for 2 years, and was in college in Herzliya when the war broke out and was called back into service in reserve duty. Wow. She is an infantry instructor, and so she has served over this past month on the Gaza border. She's been in the Golan Heights and a few other places. Right now, thank God, she is back in her apartment and on call, but not currently serving at the moment. But she could go back at any time. Yeah. So on a personal level, it's been a difficult time because, as a parent and as a father, my wife, we're concerned and we're worried for our children. Sure. And so my wife and I haven't had too much sleep over the past month along those lines. At the same time, as a rabbi and as a leader in the community, it's also difficult on a different level because the community is also struggling and is in pain, and to be there for others and help them try to navigate through this difficult time, especially while also struggling on a personal level, can be a difficult balance sometimes, and I have to compartmentalize in some ways, and sort of put on a different hat based on the conversation that I'm having and the people with whom I am, conversing.
What do you hear from your congregants?
Yeah. Well, I think that, at first it was just shock, shock that, that this could happen and how it could happen, and extreme pain. You realize that everyone in the Jewish community, I say everyone, but I have to put in, almost everyone, you can never say with 100% certainty, but most people have some sort of connection to the state of Israel or to people in Israel, have friends there, colleagues there, family there. So almost everyone knows someone who is directly affected in some way. And so it becomes very personal for everyone. And then of course, since the war started, as we know, there's been a huge rise in anti-Semitism. Certainly on college campuses is where we're hearing the most, but it's happening everywhere locally, throughout the country, throughout the world, frankly, and that's something that's very concerning to our congregants and to all of us. I sat down with a group of high schoolers last week from Staples, about 20 or so students. I reached out as things were escalating and said, maybe it's time, I'll order some pizza if you want to come and talk and just kind of share how are you feeling and what are you experiencing and what do you think about what's happening. And we had a beautiful hour-and-a-half conversation, and really was able to get a little bit of insight into, in terms of what's going on from a high school perspective, and what came out of that was a few things. One, the need for more conversation, that we weren't going to just solve everything in one night. And I said, hey, I'll provide the pizza. If you want to keep talking, we'll talk as often as we need to do that. Sure. There's a lot of issues to talk about, and let's keep talking. And they seemed open and interested in continuing the conversation. So that's something that we will do. We'll keep talking. But the other thing that became clear is that that there is a need for spaces like this for young people to talk and to sort of process and try to understand. On a deeper level, in a safe space where they can, share their concerns, share their views, and not feel like they have to hold back. Yeah. So I think it was really something that was quite powerful.
You mentioned a rise in anti-Semitism nationally, and you mentioned Westport.
Yeah.
Is that Does it surprise you? Is it something that's just coming out now, or where does that come from?
Well, it's a good question. I think it's something that probably, sadly, has always been there. That certainly comes up and rises to the surface during times like this, and when things are heated politically, and unfortunately that sometimes rears its ugly head during times like this. I'm not fully surprised. I think that still Westport is still a pretty open, tolerant, understanding town. I don't, I think that, that there are places that are obviously much more challenging. But I think that we have an awful lot of, goodness here in town. A lot of friends. I know that we've had some beautiful gatherings at Temple Israel on Jessup Green. In Weston, there was a nice gathering last week as well, to stand up against anti-Semitism and hate of all kinds. And I think that that's really what the town is all about, is really is not allowing these things to happen. But there's always going to be a certain percentage of folks, unfortunately, that that whether it's through ignorance, whether it's through whether it's frankly young people just not understanding and being being kids, or whether there is some sort of deep-seated feelings. I think that it's not as as prevalent as it is in some other places. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you heard? I'm sure you have. Yeah. From non-Jews. Have people reached out to you, and if so, what are they saying?
Yeah, of course. One of the nice things of having these interfaith relationships is that you form friendships, and so many of our clergy, of our non-Jewish clergy, have reached out to me and to my colleagues and have basically said, "Look, we're here for you. We have your back. If there's anything that that we can do, if you or any of your congregants have experienced any sort of ill will, hatred, attacks, harassment, whatever it may be, we'll be there for you. We're here." And so we've heard some really beautiful sentiments across the board. Yeah.
So that's one of the good things, I guess, that certainly the gathering that was here on Jessup Green a couple of weeks ago with Reverend Sinclair from the United Methodist Church, and plenty of Jews were there and plenty of non-Jews.
Absolutely.
It was good to see. Your trips to Israel, part of what you do as a rabbi, part of your personal life, and some of those trips I know have included members of the community who are not part of the congregation, not Jewish. What's it like to introduce Israel to them?
Oh, I love it. Because Israel has been such an important part of my life, to be able to share those experiences in my love and passion for the land. Whether it's for congregants, for young folks, going for the very first time, some of our youngest congregants have been there, or to members of the interfaith community, and to walk through some of the holiest sites for the Christian community, for the Muslim community, and be able to walk through those and see it through their eyes, is there's nothing better. There's nothing better than that. I actually had the opportunity through New York Board of Rabbis. We took Mariano Rivera to Israel, and his church. His wife is a pastor in New Rochelle, and we took them on a trip to Israel, and was part of a baptism ceremony we witnessed for him and for the entire church. And that was in the Galilee, and that was pretty powerful.
Wow. I know our mutual friend Bill Mitchell was really looking forward to the trip last month that had to be canceled.
Postponed. We're hoping we'll get him there.
Okay.
We just had to postpone it for obvious reasons. but I know Bill Mitchell is a tremendous friend, personal friend, but also friend, obviously, to Westport, is a tremendous gift to this community. One of the great stories that I know that you've told before, that I think it's worth telling again, is that when our synagogue was looking to build on Hills Point Road, right around the corner from Mitchell's, it faced understandably some resistance from the neighbors that were concerned about a variety of things, including parking and traffic and those types of things that neighbors are concerned about. As the story goes, it was before I came here, but as the story goes, Bill Mitchell stood up at the P&Z meeting and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please don't be concerned about parking. This is a house of worship. This is what Westport's all about. If people need to park, they can park at Mitchell's and walk over or take a shuttle over, and we'll be happy to do that." And at that point, the vote was unanimous, and thanks to Bill's efforts, things went very smoothly from that point on. And he's ever since then has been a great friend of the community.
And he said, further, our employees can park elsewhere.
Yes, I'm sure.
Your bio on the temple website is intriguing. I'm going to read it here.
Yeah.
It says you sit on the floor sharing stories with young preschool students, make sushi rolls with teenagers while discussing kosher fish, and discuss business ethics in New York offices with members who commute. Yeah. So what are some of your favorite roles as rabbi?
Sushi rolls, or?
Good one.
Yeah.
Your favorite roles as rabbi, and what are some of the duties that you wish you never had to do?
Great question. I love doing all of those things, and that's why I do it. My connection with the youth is really important, and so I would have classes that we call Sushi with the Rabbi, where we would, get together and literally roll sushi and have those conversations. And that's, my way. I happen to like sushi as well, so so we're able to share that mutual appreciation and get to know them in a different way. And then I'll often go into New York City, and we've had over the years many of our congregants who work, in the city near Grand Central, and I would take a train in and we would just study in people's offices. The whole idea is to meet people where they are, wherever they may be. It's not everyone feels comfortable coming into the synagogue, perhaps, or doesn't have the time to come into the synagogue in the middle of the day. And so I learned long ago that it's best to kind of meet them where they are, to go to them wherever that may be, and to get to know them in ways that I might not otherwise get to do. So that's what makes it meaningful for me. And I always said one of the most difficult things of leaving Las Vegas actually was that I always said that I wanted to be a rabbi who stayed in the same place his entire career. My rabbi growing up did that. He was at the same synagogue from the beginning to the end. He married my parents, and he officiated at our wedding as well. And so I wanted to be sort of like a Derek Jeter that didn't, that stayed with the same team the whole time. And so it was difficult for me one of the things was, it was difficult for me to leave Las Vegas for that reason. But once I did, I said, I want to be maybe at least a two place rabbi, whatever, a two synagogue rabbi, whatever it may be, right? And one of the reasons why that's important is that you can really, when you're in a place for a long time, you have the opportunity to walk through so many different life cycle events with a family. Now that it's been over 15 years, I've been with families when their babies were born, and then they became bar and bat mitzvah, right? And now some of my first bar and bat mitzvah students who were 13 when I arrived are now 28, 27, 28, 29, and they're all starting to get married. And so I'm officiating at some of their weddings now. And so to me, that's what it's all about. It's so much more meaningful for me, and I would like to think that it's meaningful for them too, to share those experiences together as time goes on. And
the part of being a rabbi that you really could do without?
It's a great question. Look, I think with anything, there are moments where you feel as though you spend your time putting out fires. Sometimes there's pettiness that happens, whether it be in the community or in the synagogue or working out things with individuals. And sometimes people, I think, forget, what's really important in life. And so the hours that I sometimes end up spending trying to work out those types of things, I could do without, but I think it's part of life. It's probably true.
Probably true of any job.
I think it's probably true with any job. Yeah.
So you've mentioned sushi. You mentioned pizza.
Yes.
You're obviously a gourmand.
Well,
What's your favorite traditional Jewish food?
Oh, traditional Jewish food. Well, I mean, I think that I like most food, I must say, but so in Israel, I'll enjoy a good falafel or a shawarma or something, or any sort of good Israeli food. When my mother would make brisket, and now my wife makes delicious brisket as well. I'm pretty happy. A nice, whether that's over a holiday or a Shabbat dinner. But I'm pretty easy to please when it comes to food. So what's your go-to restaurant in Westport? Well, the closest around the corner for sushi is Sakura. It's right around the corner.
And for anything,
so I'm there. Yeah, so I'm there. But I
do you have a standing regular table at Sakura?
Really. No, not so much. It is challenging with my kosher eating plan. It's tough to sometimes eat out, and there are a few kosher restaurants that are not in Westport but are in Fairfield County that I like to attend as well. So I have to be careful in terms of what I can and can't eat as well. So most of what I eat is inside my house too. One of the things you may not know though is I'm also a pretty big sports fan.
I could tell.
You can tell, yeah. And
Mariano Rivera,
right?
Derek Jeter.
So I threw a few hints out there. But one of the things you don't know that we do have in common as well is that I have coached soccer as well.
Did not know that.
Yeah, so that's something that I did when I was younger. My dad was actually the coach, and I would coach with him, and had did my years of service and played a little bit of soccer myself through up until high school, and enjoyed soccer a lot.
So what's harder, being a coach or being a rabbi?
Coach for sure. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, so.
And go-to places in Westport? Favorite spots to hang out?
I'd have to say Campo Beach. I know it's pretty obvious, but there's just something that's so spectacular about it, especially in the summertime, when we're able to bring together. We do a Shabbat at the beach on Friday nights, and it's there's nothing better than it on a beautiful Friday night, and just having the whole community together, and just listening to the sounds and of everyone around, and it's pretty beautiful. As for a quiet spot, Sherwood Island is also quite spectacular, and I find it to be a little bit more spiritual. You don't run into as many people, and you can kind of have some quiet moments.
It's a great spot.
Yeah,
great spot that a lot of Westporters sort of discovered during COVID when they wanted to be not around people.
Yeah.
So last question, and a bit more serious, getting back to the serious part. You've got the pulpit to deliver one message to Westport. What would it be?
Today? Right
Anytime.
now? Anytime?
Anytime. I don't want it to be a hard question.
Yeah.
Anytime at all.
To the town of Westport. In the entire town.
It's your message to the town of Westport.
Okay. I think the message is to appreciate the blessings of everything around us, to treat every single person as if they're in the image of God, they're created in the image of God. And I think that if we were able to really do that and take that seriously, treat each and every person as if they're as if they were created in the image of God, then there's nothing that can stop this town from being, the best place to live on earth. And I think that's what we have to keep working on doing is continuing to is to treat people that way.
And you are leading the way in helping people get that message. So it's a great message, an important message. Rabbi Wiederhorn, thank you for delivering it. Thank you for all you do, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Dan, for all that you do in making this community so special as well.
I appreciate it.
All the best.